My name is Angie Chang, and I am the founder of Bay Area Girl Geek Dinners. I'm here on the couch if you can't see. Thank you for coming out. It's our 147th Girl Geek Dinner tonight. So thank you for being here. And thank you to Envoy for hosting us in their beautiful space. They're all wearing their Envoy t-shirts, and they're happy to talk to you about working here. But yeah, I want to say thank you to all our panelists for joining us tonight. I wanted to bring together strong engineering leaders to talk about their careers and journeys and also make some commentary on the news. But we're really glad they're here.
Hi, I'm Sukrita. By day, I work at Salesforce as an engineering manager. And by night, Angie and I partner up and I show up at these and we made up fun titles. So I go by managing director of Girl Geek Dinners. It's fun. Come up with crazy names. But anyway, please do tweet. So when Angie announced this event, very quickly it got sold out and we have people who really wanted to be here and we just, had to put them on the wait list. So please tweet. The Twitter handle is Envoy Girl Geek Dinner. And yeah, we'll definitely retweet after we're done with this because it's either one of us who tweets. So, but people are reading, so please do tweet. We get a lot of requests when people are on the wait list to see tweets so they can follow the conversation. So thanks all for coming and thanks for sure to our panelists.
So I brought this panel together because we see titles all the time like architect and CTO and director of engineering, and we don't always know what they mean at what company. So I wanted to ask Jen May to start by telling us a bit about what an architect at Indiegogo does and day-to-day broadly, how you got there.
Cool. So this is our general intros, right?
Yes.
So yeah, my name is Jen May. I'm an architect at Indiegogo. What I do, I'm on the engineering leadership team, along with the directors of engineering and the vice president of engineering. And I don't manage people, but I manage technical direction and the technologies that we use. We have two architects at Indiegogo, and I focus both on front-end architecture and also like platform-based things like the CDNs and the networks and the cloud. So we're kind of like a sandwich. I'm the bread, and the other architect, Barry, is kind of the filling. He does the regular backend, which is in Ruby. So that's what I do at Indiegogo. And in terms of, and in the past, I have actually spent most of my career in management. So I was a director of IT, a director of engineering for many years. And I ended up, and I started a consulting company that I ran for many years as well. And when I shut down my company and wanted to go back and just be a regular worker bee, and not have to worry about making sales and making sure everyone gets paid and all those good things, I ended up joining another consultancy that a friend of mine, Sarah Allen, whom some of you may know, started, and again, somehow ended up being a director of engineering. And then later on, we got acqui-hired by Indiegogo. So when I came to Indiegogo, it was like a chance to actually just be an engineer, which is something that I haven't done in a long time. But then I became a product manager and then architect. So I've been all over the place. And also, I got here in a non-traditional path. My major was English and history in college, so hopefully there's other people with non-traditional backgrounds here. Don't know if I answered your question, but we'll find out more later.
We were catching up with each of the panelists backstage, and the first time I met Kimber. She was a VP of engineering, and now she's a CTO. I'm curious, what's your day like as a CTO, and I'm sure other people want to know too, what skills have you acquired along the way that you put to good use now as a CTO?
Well, thank you. CTO is probably the most varied title in all technical roles. And the reason for that is it can mean a lot of different things. At a startup, the CTO can be the first technical person on board. It can be the technical founder. The CTO can be the most senior person on the engineering team that manages people. Sometimes the CTO doesn't manage anyone and is the chief technical architect and decision maker. I am none of those kinds of CTOs. In the healthcare space especially, often the CTO is the person in charge of technology, which I guess kind of makes sense. So I am in charge of our product management, design, and engineering teams, as well as some of our technical support, IT, and security. Before that, I was actually VP of engineering at One Medical, and had the experience of sort of stepping into the CTO role, taking on a bunch of functions that I'd never managed before, figuring out how to do that, and then bringing on a very good VP of engineering to fill the role that I had formerly had. What skills have I developed along the way? So I started my career as an entrepreneur. This was an amazing way to learn leadership the hard way. Went through all of the ups and downs that come with running a small company, and ultimately ended up selling that company to Box. I joined Box as I think the 43rd engineer, no, the 43rd person, the 12th engineer, and that company I think was 1,500 or so by the time I left. So we saw just absolutely explosive growth, and with that growth came the growth of my management career. I had an opportunity to learn to be a manager with some really great guidance, and ended my career there as a director before I went to One Medical.
So RK, can you tell us about what it's like to be a director of engineering at Slack and how you got to that role?
Just to make sure everyone's awake.
Hello? Hello? There it is. All right, look at this, exciting. So I'm a director of engineering at Slack. I've been there for about a year and a half. And what do we do? I mean, Slack is a very early stage startup, but we've had a lot of hyper growth. And so when I actually joined the company, I was a senior engineering manager, and I had literally 2 reports. Yeah. Is it better? Okay. So I had a very small team, and that was totally fine with me because I wanted to work at the company. I believed in what they were doing. And very quickly, I got more and more responsibility. About, I think, I want to say 6 months in or so, maybe 8 months, I got promoted to director of engineering. And a lot of what I do on a day-to-day is essentially building engineering processes, because I come from a much larger company before Slack, and there's like 60,000 people who work there, and so there's a process for everything. And coming into a new engineering organization, a lot of what you do is sort of paving the road, right? Like making it so that you can make the teams and build the teams that are the most efficient, and so that they can do the best work possible. How I came to Slack, I have also a pretty non-traditional background. I actually started college as a mathematics major. I was going to be a math teacher. Yay, math. But then I always had been introduced to kind of visual arts by an after-school job. And so I learned to do Photoshop and Illustrator, and I really kind of liked that work. So I ended up transferring schools, changing majors, and doing media arts and design. And so that's everything from making movies, doing sound, and my concentration, which was digital illustration. And so I got into coding because I didn't like this process of designing something and handing it off to someone else to code. So I had this very analytical math background, so I just taught myself. And then I ended up continuing that learning when I went to grad school. And there I did even more coding. I did fine art painting, 3D. And so I am a developer, but I also have an MFA. And I think I have to continually have this conversation of, no, it's an MFA, but I also code. And I like, I like this idea of, form following function. And I think, so I think that's kind of how I came into tech. And then after grad school, I worked at CNET, which is, anyone know what that is? It's a very old media company. And then a company called Google, and then and then Slack. So yeah.
Just to spare everyone's ears, we'll share the mic. Rachel, you're next. We definitely want to hear about your journey and how you've now reached this point where you're an engineering manager, and how did you get to this point, and what your day is like.
Cool. So I've been at Lever for almost 3.5 years now, and I actually joined as an engineer, and about 2 years in is when Nate asked me for the first time whether I wanted to be an engineering manager, and my first response was no. Basically, what had happened is, being an early engineer and at an early stage startup, I joined when it was about 10 people. You start taking on more and more responsibilities as the company's growing, and I kind of moved from building features to building features that involved like refactoring the entire data schema and running these migrations and doing it all without like the users noticing. So kind of moving down the stack, and so I was working very closely with our infrastructure team, and we were looking to hire an infrastructure manager. And hiring managers is a really difficult thing to do. Especially when you're a startup, because they have a huge influence on the culture. So you really need to find somebody that very much aligns with the company's values, and also is interested in doing the shape and form of engineering management that you have at that company. And so we'd been searching for a really long time, and in the absence of a manager, I kind of picked up a lot of those responsibilities. And so Nate asked me like, hey, do you want to do it full time, like for real? And I was really, the first time I said no, because I was really afraid of missing programming. I really enjoyed being an engineer. I was excited about the management thing, which is why I started doing a lot of those related responsibilities. But I was really afraid to sort of let go. And so I went back to, he's like, okay, that's no problem. Like, and so I went back to being an IC for a while, and then he asked me again like 3 months later, and like he'd come up with like 2 different paths. He's like, here's, if you want to like, focus on the technical stuff, like here's like a really cool technical project you can focus on, but you have to let go of these things that you've taken on. And if you go, or you can go down the manager path, and like this is what you can do. And I really appreciated him like laying those 2 options out for me, because it felt like I was choosing and not like pushed into management. And I really kind of considered what I wanted, and I asked him like, if I don't like management, can I go back? And he's like, of course. So I ended up choosing that, and I've been a manager for a little over a year now. I manage our backend and infrastructure teams. And what that looks like day to day, I consider, so I'm currently reading Radical Candor, and the way that Kim Scott defines what a manager is supposed to do is guide teams to achieve results. So the guidance part is a lot of, involves a lot of listening, and like really being, like having conversations with people, and like listening to what's being said, what's not being said, and providing input and asking questions to get people to arrive at their own conclusions. And then the achieve results part is also, I think, relies a lot on communication and translating and finding the alignment between like the company goals and how your team contributes to those, and then making sure that everyone on your team understands how they contribute, and how their personal goals also align with how they're contributing to the company.
That's a great segue to our next question, which is, what are some resources, whether they're books, thought leaders, or people to just follow on Twitter, that have helped you in your career?
If you get me started on leadership books, like we're going to be going all night. So I'll start with my favorite pick, which is the book Multipliers. And it's really all about almost exactly what was just said. It's about how do you, as a leader, make your team better than the sum of its parts, and bigger than the sum of its parts, and more effective, and make it a place that people really want to be and want to be achieving their goals. And I think for me, I read it early in my management career. I actually read it again a few months ago, and I find I get something new from it every time. Multipliers.
So I heard all of you talk about your path, and with that, I assume that your goals kept changing, right? Every time you got to the next step. So how do you continually keep a watch out for the gaps that you have to get to that next new goal? And then once you get to that next new goal, if it did change or it stayed constant, how do you then keep a lookout for the next gap? And how do you do this? How have you been doing this, and how do you recommend people do this? Any of you?
Sure. Yeah. I try to think about it in terms of what is the highest aspiration that I have for myself, and a lot of people think about 5-year plans, and if I look back at my life 5 years from 5 years ago, I probably would not think that I would be in the position that I'm in. But what I mean by highest aspiration is it to be CEO of a company? Is it to be CTO of a company? Is it to just continue to be director of engineering? And knowing that helps me figure out how to chart my career. It's like the North Star. So for example, if I said I want to one day be CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I would probably make different career decisions. I might try to get bigger and bigger teams. I might leave jobs more often. I might have different goals. Up until very recently, my aspiration for myself, I like the director of engineering level. I like the ability to mentor people on a one-to-one kind of level. I like that human interaction, and I feel that in some roles, like if I'm CTO of a company that has 10,000 engineers, it's probably difficult to do that, in the way that I would like to do that. Not that it's bad or good or bad. It's just that's what I see as the highest aspiration for myself. And so, but I think though, I would say if you would ask me that today, maybe that answer is different, right? And so understanding that and knowing that as my experiences change, that aspiration maybe changes, and then maybe I have to think, maybe I should do things differently. Maybe I should network. Maybe I should do things like Girl Geek dinners, right, to get more exposure. Whatever that happens to be, I think understanding what that North Star is pretty important.
I think there's a lot of times where I realized later I had no idea what I was looking for or what my goal should be. So before I joined Lever, I actually spent 4 months job searching, and that's a long time to think about what you want in your next job. And so I put together this huge packet. I was reading a lot of books, and I was thinking about what I wanted in my next company. And I had come up with this checklist of all these things that I was looking for. So I was really interested in learning and growing. So I assumed that meant, okay, I need to join a team with all these senior engineers with 10 years of experience on me, and that's the way that I'm gonna learn. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm really into data visualization, and I really want to do something in the personal fitness or personal health space. And so all these things were things that I was this is my goal. This is what I'm looking for. And when Nate contacted me about Lever, I was in Boston looking for a job. So he was like, we're in San Francisco. I'm like, San Francisco, I don't know. And he's like, yeah, and we're building hiring software. And I was like, that does not sound remotely like what I'm looking for. But he convinced me to talk to Sarah, and Sarah convinced me to come out to visit Lever for a week and just spend time in the office, getting to the company and what they were working on and the people on the team. And I did, and I'm really glad that I did, because even though Lever checked none of the boxes of my 4-month huge document and checklist, I really came away from that experience feeling like it was a company with a product and a team that I could really get behind, and I joined and have been there ever since. So But I don't think that means that the exercise of thinking through what I wanted was invaluable. There's a lot I learned about myself during the process, but I think that what I took away from this is that you often don't know what all the opportunities and options are going to be. So you can think about what you're looking for and go through that exercise, but also don't limit yourself when you find something that maybe doesn't match what you expected.
I'm just gonna add a little bit, which is, I think that's a really good point. It's like you don't know, sometimes you don't know what all the options are. And one of the things that really helped me earlier in my career, I mean, it's kind of a different time. I knew more women engineers who were leaving the industry than were coming in, so it was really hard to find other people. So support groups and like going to sisters and other organizations was really helpful. And I think talking to people is really a good idea in terms of like just generally getting support. I think it's a little bit better now, but to be like a woman in engineering, but having like talking to your peers, and also if there's someone that you admire, somebody whose job you think you might want, it's, you know, people are often very willing to have an informal interview with you. And if you reach out and you say, hey, I really want to find out more about being an architect or more about being a product manager or a director of engineering, can I just buy you lunch, or can we get coffee, or can we just chat after work? A lot of people are really open to that. And I think it'd be really great for people to take advantage of that. I think that at an event like this, you're going to see all kinds of people. You see us, you know, you could say, hey, can we connect on LinkedIn, and then maybe have a follow-up meeting. These are totally things that are open to people, and I think that this is very helpful. Yeah.
I occasionally give a workshop on sort of career paths and thinking about career paths. And one of my very favorite exercises from that workshop is that we draw 3 different pictures of things that could happen that might be like dream career moments. And so I draw, for example, well, maybe I'm going to quit my job and join a venture capital firm and go interview a bunch of heads of engineering and write a book about everything I just learned. Wouldn't that be fun? My other one's like, I'm going to be the CTO of the US, and won't that be very exciting, except maybe not right now. What the point of the exercise isn't so much the crazy visions, but the part where you look into each of those visions and say, what about this can enhance my career right now? So I did that crazy vision exercise around writing that book, and I said, you know what I want to do? I want to get my ideas out there. I want to start writing. And so about a year ago, I said, I'm going to make time to start writing essays, and started posting on Medium, something anybody can do, and found that it was a wonderful way to grow my career in a direction that it hadn't been before. It wasn't just about aiming for what is the next level up in the management chain, but rather what is another dimension that I can add to my career today.
Thank you for all those thoughts. One thing that I hear a lot about in the Silicon Valley and in women's events is the topic of mentorship and sponsorship. I wanted to I see some faces here, see your reactions and kind of how you thought about getting mentored or finding a mentor, and how you approach that.
When I became a director, it was the first time in my career that there were some things that just didn't quite make sense. So I got some feedback that said I needed to be more strategic. Has anyone ever gotten that feedback before? It's like, what does that even mean? Where do I start being more strategic? So I thought, you know, the only way I'm going to really find out is go ask some people who are supposedly strategic what they're doing to be strategic. And then I can do those things, and then therefore I will also be strategic. So at that time, this is one of the wonderful parts about being part of the sort of sisterhood of women in technology, is that when I went out and I asked for people to be introduced to, I got to meet these just like badass female, largely also some men, but heads of engineering who were ahead of me in my career, and it could help fill in that gap on what strategy actually meant. And went around and had a chance to chat with many of them. I'm still in touch with some of them. I'm pretty sure if I told them that they were my mentor, they would look at me and say, that makes me feel old. But we are friends and we do meet up and we compare challenges. And there's nothing like someone who's done it before a couple of times to help you cut through your own thought process and figure out the right next step.
A little. I think that like in recent years I've been able to find mentorship via peers, and there's so many amazing groups like this and meetups and that kind of thing. And I think there's a lot more opportunities for women in tech nowadays. But I think, just to be honest, when I was coming up in my career, I first became a director of engineering at the first tech company that I worked at, and there is, to be honest, a certain amount of privilege that comes into being a mentor or having a mentor, because people who are CTOs or who are VPs of engineering, they maybe have 2 spare hours a week that they can spend on something that is not work or family. And unless you have like a connection, like they're much more likely to spend that time on someone who looks like them or who is in their social circle or is the brother of the person they went to, Ivy with. And so I just, quite honestly, those doors weren't always open to me. And so I think now that's why I try to make the time, and there's some people here who work with me at Slack, and I try to always make time for one-on-ones. I go to events, I mentor. I just came back from a big recruiting trip at HBCUs in Atlanta, and so I try to make it so that road is, a little bit easier for those behind me, but it wasn't easy, to be honest.
I think when people talk about mentorship, the sort of thing, the vision that comes to mind is like, oh, like you find a mentor and then you like meet with them and they like mentor you over the course of many years. And I think that sometimes happens, but I think for me, like it has taken many different forms. It may be, a one-on-one conversation with an engineer, with a manager who's on like a different team cross-functionally, and I like learn something from that conversation and I take it away. It may be a coffee meeting with an eng manager at another company, and we have like one conversation that I like really enjoy and like take something away from, and it's not necessarily an ongoing thing. So I think that there's like a lot of different shapes and forms of conversations with and connections with people that you can learn from and take insights away, and it doesn't have to sort of be necessarily a really long or long ongoing formal relationship.
Yeah, I guess, I'll echo what everyone said. And especially in my own case, it's more peers that are helpful than trying to look up, I guess. Partly because when I was doing this the most, it was hard to find people. The other thing I'd ask is, the other part of that, of your question, was about sponsorship. So it's like, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I think what you mean is like when somebody is going to advocate for you, right, and help you find opportunities. Does that sound right for sponsorship? Okay. So yeah, these are really important too. And again, a lot of it is like expanding your network and getting to know people. The things they say about like getting informational interviews or just going to events like this is really helpful because, and you mentioned this, it's like it really depends, like who you know is really going to help you out, and you don't know whether that person you went out to coffee with is going to get you a job. Like I have a friend who did an informational interview with someplace, and eventually she ended up being the VP of product there. So it's kind of like a lot of these things kind of lead to other things, but you don't know. You can't plan on it. You can't say, oh, I'm going to talk to this person and go out to coffee and I'm going to get hired. It's not necessarily going to be that way, but you can make more opportunities for yourself by meeting more people and taking advantage of networking. And then on the other side of that, I feel that because I feel really fortunate to have the positions that I have had, I kind of feel that it's really important to kind of give back. And so I try to think about like the things that would have helped me. Like sometimes people are afraid to ask, they're afraid to approach you. So sometimes like if there's other people I meet at events like this or at work, I may offer suggestions in terms of career advice. Like, for example, the best time to negotiate or plan for negotiation is like a year before your negotiation, right? Like you want to plan ahead, make sure that you've set things up for your negotiation. So that's something that we talked about in the Women in Tech group back in Yoga recently. And also I try to look for opportunities, right? So like not just the jobs that I am directly involved in hiring for, but also opportunities all around. And I may mention to someone who's looking to hire someone, or someone who's thinking about creating a position, that somebody might be really good for that. It's not even just positions, sometimes it's projects. Like some projects have a higher profile than other projects do too. So it's always kind of good to think about that, because a lot of the, occasionally I run into a situation where somebody who has very little experience has an incredibly, like a job with a lot of responsibilities, like a VP position or something like that. And I wonder, like, how did that happen? And almost always it turns out to be because of connections. It's like they had a mentor at a company who helped them get up to the next level, like go to manager and then to director and then maybe to VP as well. So it's really important both, to help other people out as well as it is to like look for those opportunities.
Can I take one more stab at this? I just want to share, there are 3 ways to be a super awesome mentee. So if you're out looking for a mentor, there's 3 things that I highly recommend. One is to take on don't be afraid to reach out, but take on the logistics yourself. Do the hard parts, send the available times, and really be on top of setting up the meeting schedules. The second thing is to listen really closely and come back with reports of what you tried and how it worked. As a mentor, you would not believe the number of times I have these great conversations with people and we talk about their plan and I'm so excited to hear how it goes and nobody ever gets back to me. I really wonder whether our plan was a good one. And I actually learn a lot too from the process of people trying things out in their own companies. So that's a second thing. And then the third thing is there are more ways that you can give back to a mentor than you might immediately think of. So I've had a mentee offer to feature me in an article she was writing, and she actually got quite a bit of traction on it. It was really cool for me. I've had people send me leads for good candidates. Oh my gosh, if you want lots of mentoring, send great candidate leads. This was great. And so it's not a bi-directional exchange. It's not as though I mentor and I expect to get paid in some fashion for that work. I like to help people in their career because it's the right thing to do, and I was there once too. But at the same time, if folks are willing to put in the time and the effort to be a great mentee, then it really makes the relationship worth it.
This is all like amazing advice, and I want to say though, every Girl Geek dinner we attend, we're fortunate because our list of role models just grows with that. So while you have talked about mentorship and sponsorship, I'm curious, even a peer can be a role model. So has there been one or many that you can think of right now who has really impacted you?
A specific name of a person? Oh, does someone else want to go first?
I would say, I mean, in terms of peer mentorship, yes. I think the benefit of having a peer that or somebody is that they're likely going through the same type of growth as you, so they're like really close to it, and you can really help each other. And sometimes it's just helpful to have someone who's willing to listen, and like help you talk things out and help you come to realizations yourself. So I think early lever, when we were growing as a company, there's a lot of challenges and like ups and downs when you're growing and built a startup. So having being able to rely on the people around you to like learn from them is a it's a really great relationship to have, and there's a lot you can get out of it and give to.
Yeah, I think when I was starting up and I was in IC, there were a lot of technical people who I think really taught me how to do higher level problem solving, and who I really wanted to learn from. And I think that as I moved into management, the people who were really influential to me were people who I felt like people who like I basically really wanted to emulate, right? Like if these people who I went into a meeting with these people and I felt like, wow, that was really an important meeting. I really got a lot out of that. How did they do that? How did they structure it? How did they not waste people's time? And then, you know, if I think it also helped me because I think sometimes in our careers, I am certainly guilty of this too, you have skill inflation. You're like, I'm the most amazing engineer there ever was, and you're not. You're just, it's just the reality of the situation. And so I try to look at like, if there's someone who's being really successful, am I really at the same level as that person? What are they doing that I'm not doing? Yeah, so I think it comes from different directions, and I think for me it really comes down to what I try not to do though is to be like, oh, you ever see someone in there and it's a really amazing dress and you're like, that would not look good on me, right? You have to also know when to emulate the things that work for you and not to completely lose self of yourself, because then that makes you doubt your own instincts and your own ability to grow. So it's just been a hard path, but I think I think now I'm at a pretty solid point where I kind of know who to associate myself with and who I feel like I can best learn from.
There was a mention of hard things in the Silicon Valley, and I wanted to ask a question about, is there a time where like you felt that you might leave tech or the workplace, and what did you do about that?
Oh yeah, I totally left tech. That's why I had big eye reaction. In between my last company and current company, I actually just was semi kind of retired for 3 years. And I just traveled. I went to Thailand and Portugal and Spain and all the places, India. And I also, as a tech person, when you get into management, one of the things that's sad about being a manager is you will pretty much guaranteed never code again. I mean, there's exceptions, but for the most part, it's very difficult, right? And so I just did all the projects. I built a CRUD app in every single technology ever, right? I took an MIT course on algorithms, Harvard CS50 course, all the things, right? And I did that because, yeah, you get to a point where you're just working so much, you're achieving, you're working, and you start to lose sight of the thing that you really love to begin with. And I really wanted to reconnect with that thing. But I also feel like as much as I love Slack, it's a great company, I sometimes have thoughts of, is this my last tech company? You know, should I retire and just teach math to 7th graders? These are thoughts that I have. And not because, but just, it is a thought that I have had.
Yeah, I've had this thought over and over again. As I mentioned, I majored in English and history, and I always thought I was going to go to grad school in literature or history or something. And so when I first started in tech, I was actually doing testing. I was a QA person, just doing black box testing. And I thought, okay, I'll pay off some of my debts, and then I'm going to go to grad school. And then the debts didn't really decrease as quickly as I was hoping they would. And then other opportunities came up, and I started getting more interesting jobs, and so I kind of got sucked back in. And then I ended up working for a company that I started as the manager of IT and quickly became director of IT, and then before becoming director of engineering. But during that director of IT time, I think that's where most of my PTSD from management comes from. We grew the company from about 30 people to more than 300 in less than 2 years. And while that's very small compared to like what Slack has gone through, it was really kind of harrowing, because like you hire 300 people. To grow to 300 people, you actually have hired maybe 600 people, because a lot of people didn't stick around. And so at the end of that, I was like questioning my life's choices. I was like, do I want to be in tech? Do I want to be? And a lot of my friends were like, working for nonprofits and doing social justice work, and I'm like, and I'm noticing that my income is getting higher, and it's starting to feel really weird. And so I thought, do I identify more with the people I work with or the people in my community? And I was really kind of falling on the side of the community. And so that was another time I thought I quit. In fact, I did actually quit. And I thought, I'm going to take a little bit of time off, and I am going to write a novel, and I'm just going to completely change stuff up. And then, I'm so bad about coming up with like directions for my career, but then I realized that there's all these nonprofits that needed help, right? And they kept asking for help, and I kept volunteering until one of them really, really, really wanted to pay me, which is how my consulting company got started. And then, they had offices all over California. So I did that for a while, and then I started to burn out on that. So these are a lot of times about like leaving tech because of various reasons. I got really sad because in the nonprofit world, I discovered that there's a lot of people who are really passionate, and I really love that. But there's also a lot of nonprofits that work their people in really unsustainable ways, and that made me really sad. So what brought me back, then I shut down my consulting company. In fact, I could have sold it. Somebody offered me to buy it, and I refused because they would not guarantee that everyone would keep their job. So I found jobs for all of my people, and I shut down my consulting company, and I thought, okay, now I'm really done. But what brought me back is that suddenly there were a lot of small shops that were starting to be able to do apps. The things in mobile were really interesting. You could have one developer shops, and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I also found out, like, amongst even my social justice friends, is like, wow, development is like really cool now again because you can make apps. Not that they weren't apps before, but now they're apps. TM. And it became really interesting again too, because I started talking to people and and I started thinking, it's not just about like what the goal of your company is. It's not just the mission. It's also how you do business, right? And so I started getting more involved with businesses that were trying to be sustainable, trying to keep people working under 40 hours a week, having good life-work balance, which is like Indiegogo is absolutely like that, and really kind of like valuing people, and that kind of helped rejuvenate me. So that's a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but there you go.
I haven't considered leaving, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that there's things that could be better about tech. And actually, I think the reason why I am very happy staying in tech and envisioning myself here is because I have chosen to sort of take this view of like, okay, I can learn how to help create an environment that I will enjoy working in. And when I joined Lever early on, one of the things that I really cared about is being on an engineering team with engineers who very much valued non-technical skills, soft skills, whatever you call those things that you contribute to a team beyond just coding. I'd sort of seen engineering teams where there were engineers who only valued like what they could contribute technically and built like an identity around it, and then didn't see themselves as social or would invest or value those skills. And so you ended up with people on the team, because those skills are really important, that would disproportionately be burdened with like the emotional labor. And I didn't want to work on a team where that was the case. So early on, I started these conversations about, I really think that evaluating for these skills in interviews is really important in addition to technical skills. I want us to make sure that we're recognizing and rewarding people on the team for contributing in these ways. And I love the team at Lever because the engineers, each of them values what they bring to the team beyond their technical skills and are willing to continue to invest and make improvements in those areas. And it's not the type of engineering team that everyone's going to want to work on, but I've really appreciated it. And I think I don't have any proof of this, but I think that it's one of the reasons why Lever's engineering team is over 40% women today. So and we work on hiring software, and hiring is really difficult to do well. But if you can build a team, or at least help build a team that you really enjoy working with, you can go and work on any problem that you find important and impactful, and build a team around you that you really enjoy working with, in tech. So that's kind of what keeps me going and why I don't consider leaving.
I think I could have pretty much, not nearly as eloquently, said the same thing that I just heard. To me, there's solving hard problems is really, really fun. And I think that's a lot of what brings people to technology. But it turns out there's a lot of hard problems in the world. Healthcare, the healthcare system, how to make that work. How to build great teams. That has some parallels to building software. And so that I find that, especially where I sit in tech, being able to build teams to think about really hard problems that are affecting society today, and then to also have that grounding in technical problems, for me is just such an exciting place to be.
Our final question from the moderators tonight is, what would you tell your younger self? The piece of advice you give your younger self?
I love this question. I think one of the for me at the time, one of the harder things about being in tech when I was coming up was I faced a lot of the kind of bigotry of low expectation, right? People often ask me, do I face discrimination being a Black person in tech? And my answer is almost always no. But being a woman, absolutely, right? Like, it's just this kind of people assuming I'm not technical, I don't know how to code, these kinds of things. So the advice that I would give to my younger self is, I feel like instead of asking questions or finding a mentor or finding someone who could kind of help me, I would just really invest a lot of time in learning things on my own. If I didn't know how to do a thing, I'd buy a book, cram, learn that thing. And if I had just asked for help, I could have gotten a lot farther faster, right? And so I think I would just give myself a break and be like, it's okay. You don't have to care so much what other people think. It's okay if you don't know something. Find other people who don't know something and learn together. And I think, that's basically what I would say.
So in my spare time, I train at the Circus Center. I don't have a lot of spare time, so not lots of training. But I tried out the flying trapeze probably 6 years ago and fell in love. Now, I'm afraid of heights. So this is like kind of one of those terrifying fall in love moments. But what's kind of cool about the flying trapeze is that when you learn, you're in safety lines. So you're being held by an instructor in safety lines. You're over a net. Like, this is not a particularly risky proposition in any way. But the feeling of fear is still there, and it's still very real. And it's a really good metaphor for, in general, the feeling of fear is different from an accurate perception of risk in a scenario. And I would just have my younger self get a lot better at identifying whether the fear I feel was a feeling or whether it actually indicated that the thing I was about to do was risky. Because ultimately there's a lot of things that are scary, but not all that risky, that help land us in really wonderful places in our career, in our personal lives. And I think I just wish I would have known that sooner.
So I think for me, early in my career, I had this sense that I had to do everything all at once. And I wanted to learn all the things about being a great engineer, and I wanted to learn project management, and I kind of just got very, like you're trying to learn all these things, but you can't actually learn any of them well because you're just it's like too many things, and you're not spending enough time with any one of them to get to have it ingrained and to learn it well enough. So I think some advice that I got at that point in time was slow down, and like you can do everything, just not all at once. So like focus on one thing, and learn selective neglect. I think it's sometimes hard to know what not to do, what not to spend your time on, to say no to things, to stop doing things, and it's okay to do that. And actually, selectively neglecting things that are not important to do now allows you to create space to do those things that you do choose to do well, and learn from them. So I think selective neglect.
I've learned a lot from my mistakes in my career. So I think one of the things I tell myself is you can learn a lot from mistakes, but they don't have to be your mistakes, because it would have been better if I learned from other people's mistakes. And a lot of the advice I give is probably some of the stuff that we've mentioned here is like I really think it would have been great if I earlier in my career had talked to people. I actually didn't intend to become an engineer; it just weirdly happened. But to like think ahead and to talk to people who are doing jobs that you might want to do. Talk to peers, have work-life balance, which is really important early in my career. I mean, and it maybe have been a cultural thing that the companies I worked for expected, 60 hours a week, which was really unsustainable. And to really think about like strategic things. I mean, I guess we mentioned that too. Like think about what you want to do and how each step is going to take you there. And also think about like the impact beyond yourself, right? Like who would have thought that trying to solve the problem of ride sharing could end up creating one of the most evil companies in existence? I mean, it was just completely counterintuitive, and that's because they didn't think ahead and think about the ramifications of what they were doing. And also, who thought that the tech industry, for all the great things that we've done, would have such a dramatic effect on displacement of people. And that's like one of my really sad things is like how this industry that I'm part of is creating all these problems. And as an industry, we're not doing a really awesome job of solving these problems. So I kind of would have said some of these things to myself, maybe think ahead, think about like the kind of things that you can have an impact in and be happy with.
Oh my gosh, awesome. I feel like I've learned so much tonight. Thank you all. Let's give them a round of applause.
I feel like Angie and I have definitely asked everything we wanted to ask. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? What was the advice people gave you to be more strategic? Like, what were theirs?
Specifically, we were in a hyper-growth phase, and I was chartered with more stuff than my team of that size could possibly take on. And so specifically, there were two things. One was to draw out what my organization was going to look like in 3 months, 6 months, and a year. So write out the org charts, show how the teams are going to be structured, what are the parameters of what each team takes on, basic stuff. But and things that I already had in my head, but things that I wrote down, drew out, and took in front of our VP of engineering and said, this is the plan for my area of the product over the next year. The other thing on planning in general was to, not allow the PM team, the product managers, to drive all of the prioritization and to come with a clear sort of point of view, so that I was that sort of solid sort of second part of the planning. Because really, the further you go up in engineering leadership, the closer product management and engineering frankly get. And so to really show I had that skill set, I just wasn't articulating or showing it in a way that was particularly useful.
So this is a question for everyone. Hi. What was the best advice, something that really helped you in your career, and that you received, and what actionable steps did you take to actually implement that advice?
Early in my career, I read a lot of articles, but I didn't actually read a lot of books. So my manager was like, "You need to read full books," and I didn't really. I was like, "Okay," but I did take the advice to heart, and I actually. This is the only New Year's resolution that I've ever actually followed through on, but I resolved to read a book every week of the year. So I did it, and I learned, like, I now love reading books, and I read 30 to 50 books a year, and I learn a lot. And I think the thing with reading full books is you get more depth on topics than just kind of skimming articles on the internet, which I still do a lot of. But the other thing that I've tried is, because it's important, you can read books for fun, but a lot of books that I read, I'm hoping to get some actionable insights out of. So I use Evernote, and I actually have a notebook called Content Consumption. And everything I read, whether it's watching a video, listening to a podcast, reading an article, or a book, I take notes on it. And it forces me, even if I'm just repeating the concepts in the article, it forces me to actually think about what I'm reading. A lot of times we read, and it's like, it's not good or bad, but like you read for like confirmation. So like you're reading an article just for the joy of being like, yeah, like this is totally everything. I know everything, and this feels good to get this confirmation. And sometimes you're reading things that are actually like changing your mind or introducing new topics is like another sort of you kind of approach it differently. And then there's one articles or books that like introduce new complex topics that actually take a really long time to sit, and it's like a new paradigm or like fundamentally changes your perspective or worldview, and those can take a longer time to process and like actually require sitting and thinking. And the other thing that I've started to do recently that I consider like advanced reading is like reading like 3 or 4 books on the same topic at like all at once. Because you can connect a lot of, like if you read the same, different perspectives on the same topics, you can start making your own connections between the books and opinions, and start having your own opinions based on that. So I'll go through phases where like I read a lot on the same thing and come up with like my own connections between books. Yeah.
I'm totally joining your book club. That sounds awesome. My best advice was that you need to learn to lead as you. So there's a bunch of different styles of leadership out there. There's advice in these books that conflicts with each other. There's mentors or even great leaders that lead in just wildly different ways. And so what is the best leadership for you? Well, it turns out you get to pick. But I got the advice that I should pick in a rather informed way and to experiment. So every time I read something in one of these books that I thought might be a good idea, to take it on, try it out, and write down what happened. So you're almost launching this sort of set of experiments on yourself and your team based on the input that you're getting from these sources. And the big thing is to write down what you tried and how it turned out. And I go back to some of these early in my career, and it was really foundational in figuring out how I was going to be as a leader. And I think if I'd tried to lead like the VP of engineering at my company at the time, or like the CEOs I saw in the media, I probably wouldn't still be in technology leadership. It was really important to learn to lead in a way that felt authentic to me.
So we'll take 2 more questions.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
personally, I feel that it's very empowering. I've been in hibernation for a year, so thanks for waking me up. My question to you is, have you had experience with building a family and assuming our biological role as being mothers while holding a full-time career in tech, in actually doing technical engineering work and or management work? And what, if you had such experiences, what is the pushback that you felt or the acceptance that you felt from the company that you were working at and the team that you were working with? And basically, what's your experience with dealing with this?
Okay.
I don't yet have kids, but this is something that definitely comes up in the dialogue frequently between myself and my family, is how we're going to make it work. My husband's also a CTO of a small startup. And I think one of the neatest things about being in the role that I have today is the opportunity to help people figure out what works for them. So early in my career, I had to, somebody showed up and was pregnant one day, and I was like, uh-oh, I don't know how to deal with this. It was a really good opportunity to work with her to understand what was going to make the most sense for her life and in our organization, and really sort of formed my early impressions around what really should be flexibility with work and what can we do to make it work for people who are really good. Since then, in leadership roles, you have to make decisions about what makes the most sense for your company. But I think that I was so lucky to have mentorship from someone who reported to me in figuring out how I wanted to think about supporting my team members who were in the toughest years of starting families was really impactful.
Okay, last question. And then
I don't personally have any advice, but I might be able to connect you with a couple of people who would be able to give advice on that. So find me afterwards.
Hi, my name is Heather. I have a question about politics in the workplace, and if you have any advice on how to navigate that. I know starting my career when I was 20-something, that was definitely a challenge.
What kind of politics are you talking about? Like, are you talking about?
Like office politics, sometimes like change can be hard, and so you kind of have to navigate who to go to get decisions made, things like that.
I think it's different at different companies. Sometimes it's easier to make change when you have other people who want to make change with you. A lot of companies, they form, some companies support this more than others, but kind of creating employee groups. Like in Indiegogo, we started, a lot of these initiatives come out of engineering for some reason, but we started a diversity and inclusion group, and that has started to influence some policies at the company. And it's a group that some engineers started, and then other people joined from other groups, and then we had executives and founders join as well. So it kind of became a place where everyone could talk, get things out, and it turns out there's a lot of commonality, and there's a lot of things that people can agree on and move forward. But the key was to start talking about it.
I think navigating a company can be pretty difficult, and whether that's because of the chaos that comes with hypergrowth, or whether that's because of particularly political situations, I've always found that I do best when I can play the newbie card, or the, oh, I didn't realize it worked like that. Thanks for letting me know. And being the person who is always positive and always solution oriented and always willing to uh, pair with people to make good action happen has been the best strategy I've had to get through both the chaos moments and the politics moments. That being said, I think, politics can be really, really destructive in an organization. And so if this is something that's shaping where you are now, there are companies with varying levels of politics and varying kinds of politics. And I encourage you to take a look and see what's out there. Maybe there's something that's a little bit of a less political situation that might be a better fit for you.
I think most companies have like varying degrees of politics, right? And sometimes politics aren't necessarily even a negative thing. Like you have some situations where you have an inner circle because these people were the founders and like they're just inherently more tight knit, and these are the people who, so it's like a lot of different levels to this. And I find that a couple techniques that I use to navigate this. One is be pretty intentional about who you align yourself with, right? I think the same way that negativity is contagious, so is positivity. If there are people who, because there'll be, if there's someone who just inherently hates everything and everyone, maybe it's them, right? Like, and they've alienated everyone else and they make a beeline for you and that you're instantly their best friend because you just joined the company. And so I think a little bit of it has to do with surrounding yourself with people who you respect and who get things done. And then the other thing that I try very hard to do is being really intentional about the things that I do and the battles that I fight. Like, I'm not going to die on every hill, so the expression goes. I think you have to think, I have this goal in mind. I really want the company to be successful. I want my team to be successful, whatever it is. And focusing on that goal, how can I have the highest impact with the decisions that I make? And I think part of it is strategizing, because if you are a person, like she just noted, who gets things done and who generally, I have this one thing that I always say, I'm always like, no beefs. Like, I don't beef with people, right? Meaning people don't come to work and think, how can I really ruin Arcoy's day? No one does that, right? Like, give people the benefit of the doubt, assume good intent, and if there are conflicts, really try to focus on the goal. We're all a team. How can we work together? And absent of that, if you just have people who are unreasonable, like she said, maybe it's not the company for you. But if you are going into a situation with those things in mind, I think it generally works out a little bit better. And also, I don't let people pull me into the fray, particularly as a woman and a woman of color. I don't have the opportunity to really, I could talk a lot about AB dubs. Does anybody know what AB dubs is? Like, angry black woman, that's a whole thing. We're like, no one has heard that expression. Okay, but like, it's someone raised their hand in the back, thank you. No, so I guess what I'm saying that for me is like, I like when people come at me with this like really negative, high intense, angry sort of politicky thing, I don't engage in that intentionally. And I just try to really stay focused on what I'm trying to do. And that generally works out a little bit better for me.
I want to hear more about EV dubs for sure. But I think we're going to wrap up tonight. For the lady who asked the question about navigating through, where are you? There you are. To having a family, reach out to Angie and I. We've met so many women through all the Girl Geek dinners. We ourselves don't have kids yet. We want to. And we know people who've like been really successful. Like one person that Angie did introduced me to, who's a dear friend of hers, is now a good friend of mine as well. And the first time I met her, Angie can describe her better actually, but she was pregnant. She was showing her app that she had just built on her, she had just started her maternity leave. And so it was just like amazing to stay in touch with her and just see how her career progressed while she, raised her two children. Yeah. Anyway, so thank you all so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Please stay, hang out with us, chat, grab some beverages, grab some food, meet each other. And I always like to encourage you to not leave without making at least 1 to 3 new friends. So please say hi to each other, our panelists, and thank you again for coming out tonight. Hope you see you at another Girl Geek dinner.